Distinguished ministers, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to welcome you all to online business visit between Estonia, Finland, and the United Kingdom on smart mobility and logistics solutions. Today's event is being streamed via YouTube in Workshop platform, and the recording will remain publicly accessible also after the event. Let me briefly introduce our agenda today. We will first receive statement from the ministers of the respective countries. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Estonia, Ms. Eva-Maria Liimets, Minister for Development Cooperation and Foreign Trade of Finland, Mr. Ville Skinnari, and Parliamentary Undersecretary of State at the Department for Transport of the United Kingdom, Ms. Rachel McLean, MP. After high-level statements, we are going to proceed to a panel discussion on sustainable mobility and business opportunities. The panelists are smart mobility experts from all the three countries, and the conversation is led by Ms. Sandra Särav, the head of sustainability in Bolt. After the panel discussion, Mr. Steve Norris, President of ITS United Kingdom and former UK Transport Minister, will wrap up the public part of our today's event with closing remarks. With that, the public part of the event will finish, and there will be a short virtual coffee break. The most important part of the event, the private B2B and B2Gov meetings, continue in the B2Match platform, which you can find linked to your right on the screen. We have more than 30 companies participating in today's event, and there are currently 42 pre-booked meetings. You can find each of their information and contact details in the B2Match platform linked on the right of the screen. If you do not have a pre-booked meeting, you are very welcome to set up meetings with the participating companies during our event. And now, let me proceed with welcoming the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Estonia, Ms. Eva-Maria Liimets. Please, Ms. Liimets, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Honorable ministers, dear friends of smart mobility, it is my great pleasure to speak here today at the online business forum between Estonia, Finland and the United Kingdom on innovative smart mobility and logistics solutions. Truly, this occasion highlights the excellent deep relations between all of our three countries. As the current pandemic has restricted trade missions with business delegations, I am glad that we are taking an advantage of the online format to continue forming ties and creating business opportunities. I would have, of course, preferred to welcome you in Tallinn, but the fact that we are not increasing our carbon footprint by flying from three countries to come together has a positive impact on the environment. With the increasing need for transportation networks and mobility of people, not flying cannot, of course, be a solution for a greener future. How to move around sustainably in our regions and cross borders is the key question, which we are also discussing today. Dear friends, Estonia, Finland and the United Kingdom are like-minded in many ways. With Finland, our cross-sectoral intertwined cooperation has been vivid and effective at all levels throughout the history of our countries. Today, we are united through cross-border data exchange, EstLink power cables, Baltic Connector gas transmission pipeline, people-to-people and business contacts. Our special and close relationship with the United Kingdom is highlighted this year with several events as we celebrate 100 years of diplomatic relations. Our bilateral economic relations are solid and wide-ranging, especially in the digital field as founding members of digital nations, as well as in the field of finance. Still, we have a lot of potential for enhancing our cooperation in many sectors. Thus, I am glad that with today's event we take a first step towards enlarging our cooperation in sustainable mobility sector. I believe this is an area where we can all learn from each other and set an ambitious course for the future. The economic recovery from COVID pandemics has offered us a possibility to speed up the process of green transition by using resources from the EU in addition to our national budgets and financial institutions. While governments have a role in setting up the preconditions for green transition, private sector is vital in implementing the change. Green transition is not simply a necessary and prudent choice to save the planet. It is a growth strategy for our societies and companies. Today I can renew Estonia's commitment to green transition with a more ambitious agenda. The government is committing itself to achieve climate neutral Estonia by 2050 and remains, of course, on course to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 70% by 2030. To achieve this, we will phase out the use of oil shale by 2040 and increase the share of renewable in our energy mix as fast as possible. We intend to make maximum use of the resources allocated for green transition purposes in the EU Crisis Fund, other funds and the multi-annual budget. One of the areas where we intend to invest to reduce carbon emissions is transport. Also, we plan to increase investments in development of green technologies. Energy transition is a crucial part of becoming greener, which is very relevant for sustainable mobility. Electric scooters, bikes, cars, trucks and trains are already here, and we need renewable energy sources to fuel this change. In addition, for Estonia being in the Baltic Sea region, the obvious solution is to harness more wind energy, especially offshore wind. Dear friends, I am confident that today's event will further encourage and open up cooperation opportunities for Estonian, Finnish and British stakeholders and entrepreneurs. I would like to thank all of you once again for participating in our very special online business forum, and I wish you all great success in having new business contacts. Thank you and stay safe.
Thank you, Ms. Liimets, for these welcoming words. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Ville Skinnari, Minister for Development Cooperation and Foreign Trade of Finland, to take the stage. Please, Mr. Skinnari, the floor is yours. Yes, we can hear you.
Ladies and gentlemen, very good to meet you, and thank you for the invitation for this webinar. It's always a real pleasure to discuss matters related to innovations and mobility with our close neighbors such as Estonia and the UK. We all know the current situation in the world, but we also know that that shouldn't stop us from enhancing new business ideas, new business concepts, and new trade. Well, actually, I see that exactly the contrary. Innovative thinking, new opportunities are key when we are working towards a post-COVID recovery and a more sustainable future. Finland is very well prepared for fast actions for recovery, and our companies are well prepared to scale up and do business, especially in the field of digitalization. And the Finns have always been pioneers when it comes to finding novel solutions. And therefore, it's no wonder that much of Finland's success is due to innovations. Whether we talk about the forest industry, maritime logistics, or indeed the ICT sector. This has been achieved through building a favorable regulatory environment, promoting efficiency, and creating a society with a high level of trust and with a high level of education. I believe these are the reasons why small countries like Finland and Estonia have emerged as forerunners in the use and development of new technologies. Already now the data is going across the Gulf of Finland allowing, for instance, the use of e-prescriptions in pharmacies in both of our countries. And more is yet to come, and more is certainly being done on that front. I look forward to deepening our cooperation with the UK as well. Data supports our high quality offering. Finland is ranked the third most innovative country in the world, according to the Bloomberg Innovation Index. Finnish companies are recognized as world-class providers of technologies in smart mobility and logistics. Finland launched the world's first mobility as a service ecosystem. Moreover, the green transition and the green transformation of our societies is at the very core of both our government policies as well as business solutions. Traffic actually causes 23% of all CO2 emissions worldwide. We need to work harder to build low emission and comfortable mobility. Finland is pioneering many different technologies which support the fulfillment of such a smart mobility goal. I believe that those same technologies will also support the UK's ambitious targets for net zero emissions by 2050. There is a lot to do for all of us, for sure. The technologies needed for this are 5G solutions, digital service design, Internet of Things, location-based technologies, smart payment, software development and integration, user experience and user and human-centric design. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, Finnish smart mobility value network has the experience, expertise and vision to reshape the way we think about smart mobility and logistics. I wish to continue working with you on this topic as well as the other areas for related to green recovery as well as the UK's green revolution plan. And hopefully I can visit UK and Estonia very soon. It's been too long already since the last visit. Thank you again for making the event possible. I wish you all the webinar and a lot of success and stay safe.
Thank you, Mr. Skinnari, for these warm and welcoming words. And now I invite here Ms. Rachel McLean, MP, the Parliamentary Undersecretary of State at the Department for Transport of the United Kingdom. Please, Ms. McLean, the floor is yours.
Hello, it's a pleasure to say a few words at this important event. Throughout history, technological advances in transport usually encountered resistance. Those who opposed railways in the 1830s thought trains caused insanity amongst passengers. And Henry Ford summed up this tech phobia when he said people just wanted faster horses. These advances ensured people could overcome the challenges of the day, however, allowing them to travel further and faster, to access jobs and education and boost their quality of life. Today's challenges are increasingly complex. We have a warming planet, congested roads, and rising demand for public transport. These are international, not local issues, requiring leadership and innovation across borders. As one of the founding ITS nations, the UK will continue to lead. We have 15,000 people working in this sector with thousands more in the supply chain. Technologies such as Scoot and Mover, designed in the UK, now manage traffic flows from Croydon to California. These have led to more efficient journeys, lower emissions and safer speeds, benefiting the economy, our planet and our personal safety. Another British invention, automatic number plate recognition, is used globally to enforce traffic laws, including compliance with low emission and clean air zones. However, what most excites me is the future potential of ITS. It will be crucial to making mobility as a service a reality for all, allowing us to plan, use and pay for bus, train and taxi journeys via a single app on our phones. It will help design smarter urban spaces where transport infrastructure enhances livability, and it will take us a step closer to connected and autonomous vehicles, providing the safe, effortless travel of the future. Throughout, government will continue to provide support, such as backing ITS trials across the UK, from digitising traffic regulation orders and creating the first national parking platform, to my recent announcement paving the way for self-driving vehicles on British roads this year. To finish, I want to reiterate the importance of trade events like this. The free exchange of ideas and commerce unlocks opportunity and overcomes challenges. And that's why the UK government will always back British business on the global stage, making it as easy as possible to export our ITS expertise and services, so we can continue to make travel across the world better, easier and safer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. McLean, for these encouraging words. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to open a panel discussion, Sustainable Mobility and Business Opportunities, and give the floor and the lead to our panel moderator, Ms. Sandra Särav, the Head of Sustainability in Bolt. Please, Ms. Särav, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Agata. Thank you so much. Very excited to be here today for this very interactive and interesting hybrid panel, actually. We have two of the guests joining us virtually, and we have one guest joining me here on this very same room, which is surprising and interesting in those times of the global pandemic. So now, switching on from more theoretical discussions to practical views, it was mentioned by the ministers that both European countries as well as the UK are looking for net zero by 2050. For businesses, I know this is quite a difficult nut to pick, actually. And why? Because it's investments. For transport, which is 1/4 of the global emissions, actually, when we talk about sustainability, this is hardly seen as business opportunity, but rather something that we have to spend money on. But for this, I have three amazing guests with me here today who will discuss what kind of business opportunities they see from sustainability in transport. First, I have here with me Mr. Argo Verk, who is the Vice Chairman of ITS Estonia. Then I have two guests joining us virtually, Mr. Sami Sahala, who's the Smart Mobility Expert, Forum Virium Helsinki, City of Helsinki Innovation Company, as well as from the UK, Professor Phil Blythe, who's the Chief Scientific Advisor at UK Department for Transport, as well as Professor of Intelligent Transportation Systems at Newcastle University. So to kick off this panel, I would first like to ask the panelists to introduce themselves one by one. And Professor Blythe, I would like to start with you. Can you just provide a few sentences about yourself? And do you see sustainability as a business opportunity in transportation?
Hi, yes. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry I can't sit on the couch with you today and discuss this, but hopefully we can do that in the future. My name's Phil Blythe. I'm Professor, but also Chief Scientific Advisor at the Department for Transport. And my role is to ensure that science, technology, and innovation is brought into policy delivery in the department, and that we support and invest in innovation. So all the things that Minister McLean mentioned regarding opportunities for decarbonisation and net zero is part of my portfolio, and not just for roads, rail, aviation, maritime as well. My view is this isn't a difficult investment for companies because they have to do it. This is a real opportunity. You know, we have to green transport. You have the certainty that is government policy here and around the world. We should really focus minds in finding those innovative solutions. I'll leave it there and we can discuss more later.
Thank you so much, Professor. Now we'll move on to the studio with Argo here with me. And Argo, please also, can you introduce yourself and answer the same question? What business opportunities are there for sustainable transport?
Thank you, Sandra. My name is Argo Verk and I represent ITS Estonia. ITS Estonia is a network of private companies and public organizations. And as the name says, we are concentrating on intelligent transport systems. And of course, smart mobility is one of the most important topics within ITS Estonia. And in my everyday job, I'm also head of sales at Ridango, which is an international technology company providing solutions for public transport like ticketing, payment and real-time. Regarding the question, yes, I agree that this is a business opportunity, but also private companies mostly look how to make money, if I put it bluntly. So I think the driving force should still come from the public sector because they have the obligation to do that. So through the rules and regulations and tender procedures, they can enforce these kind of changes. And of course, the private companies will follow these.
Thank you so much. And hold that thought. I would definitely like to come back to this, that where should the driving force come from? And now, last but not least, joining also us virtually, Mr. Sami Sahala. Please introduce yourself and also, do you see there are business opportunities for transport in sustainability, or is this just something we have to spend money on to save our future?
Hi, good afternoon. So representing City of Helsinki, for Virium, which is the in-house innovation agency of City of Helsinki. We in Helsinki, as in every city, the sustainable mobility is a must. We need to do that. We need to find different ways how to do that, and we try to help them open us innovation side as much as possible. So coming back to your question. Especially on the business side. Yes, there's definitely business opportunities there in terms of cities and public sector in general as well. We need different solutions. We need different innovations. We can't do that ourselves. Somebody needs to do it for us. So there's your business opportunity.
Thank you, Sami. I would turn back to Argo now, and I asked you to hold that thought. You mentioned that companies still need to make money, correct? And for the companies, the consumer is the user who helps them make money. And you also mentioned that the help should come from public sector with regulations and these sorts of things. Do you think the user demand is there? And are companies already willing to spend money on sustainability without the regulations as well?
I'm sure they are, but to some extent. I mean, there is always an innovation in private sector, and I think we need visionaries who think about the solutions and things which will come in 10, 15, 20 years, which will today look like a science fiction. Sure, we need them, but we need to do the work just now as well, and the businesses need to thrive and grow and so on. So and therefore, I think if you think about the sustainable mobility, it comes with a quite high price still. If you think about the public transport, for example, zero emission buses, etc. So I think the driving force in that sense should be from the public sector because they are demanded, they are required to do that, and they through the purchase processes, etc., they actually can enforce that. Of course, everyone who wants to do business with public sector, who wants to provide the operating, the services, transport services, they need to comply with these regulations. And then the playing field is even in that sense. But I think one of the factors and driving forces between for the sustainability is also changing the people's mindset, because this is very much about mindset, how we think as an individuals, how we feel the mobility should look like. Because if we can't change that, this all doesn't come together in the end. And there also I see that the public sector's roles must be very big.
Thank you. And Actually, I myself, I mentioned I work at Bolton, and we recently did a study among our users, and we asked, would you switch to more sustainable mobility options if they were available? And then 90+% of the people said they would switch. And then the second question was, are you willing to pay a bit more for the service if it's more sustainable? And then again, 90+% of the people said no. People are not yet willing to spend this money. And with this, I would direct my question to Professor Blythe. So it's been mentioned that the drag or the push needs to come from the public sector. What do you think? How much the role of public-private partnership plays in this becoming sustainable? And how can we convince users to switch to more sustainable options, even if they are a bit more expensive at this point?
Well, clearly, government and the public sector have to provide the leadership and say this is what we need to achieve. But we can't deliver that. We need the public sector to come up with the innovations to deliver that. But we also need to have a narrative to explain to the public why we are doing this and what it means for them. So some of the announcements made by government recently concerning electromobility, you can't buy a petrol diesel car in the UK from 2030, for example. That's really focused industry to deliver solutions, extend their production of vehicles and charging infrastructure, and also companies to engage with individuals and businesses to get them to think about buying these vehicles. So it's led by the fact that the policy says we are going here, and then industry and innovators have to deliver for it. One example I'd like to give is hydrogen. We really haven't thought about hydrogen in transport until very, very recently. So we're about 10, 12 years behind the thinking we are on electromobility. But we now recognize that large road vehicles, off-road vehicles, trains, planes, and maritime will need hydrogen. And by giving some leadership now, we've set up a hydrogen advisory council led by one of our secretaries of state. We're getting industry to understand what our challenges are, and they are beginning to deliver on lower cost electrolyzers, fuel cells, etc. In parallel with that, we're engaging with public to begin to understand their attitude towards hydrogen and what it needs to be done now, and in a pathway towards adoption, which will support them to do that, and give industry the positive view that it is worth the investment because we are going down that pathway.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. And now, Sami, I have actually two questions for you. So first, how do you feel about hydrogen?
I don't feel anything about it yet. It's so new. We haven't really any experience with it yet. But I'd say that we all, as in public sector, we need to have door open to any new other fuels, so to speak. And we need to lead by example. Related to what was just said, be the first one to take up, for example, electric fleets in our own operations, maybe hydrogen as well. Be the first customer to companies, for example. That's a best way of pushing the development as well. Maybe carrying part of new development. So that's how we should approach it as much as we can. But then again, it comes down to money in the end, and that's always a challenge. So we need different types of funding in order to do that as well.
Thank you. And I was hoping you would say that the leading should come from the public sector, correct? And it was mentioned by Professor Blythe as well that the UK is banning the sale of new ICE internal combustion engine cars as of 2025. Is there anything that the city of Helsinki is doing or should be doing in terms of, let's say, committing that taxi service or any public transport service should only be provided with zero low emission cars from X time? Do you think you can give this push? Are you willing to give this push?
Well, for public transport, we've already done that. The transform is going on. It's clear targets to get that to be zero emission in actually near future. Then regarding other transport, we are looking at that creating low emission zone and like every city, different kind of methods that cities can have. The challenge a little bit is that here in Nordics, and I think in Estonia as well, the cities don't have that much of local regulative power. It comes from the national level. And therefore, we need to have, and we do have a good dialogue with the national government as well in this sense.
I completely agree. Thank you. And now I would turn back to you, Argo, at the studio. And I think we all mentioned here that public-private partnership is important, that really the push has to come from the public sector, either with tenders or with regulations. But do you think, are there some new technologies that can help those transport companies go sustainable? And what kind of technologies would you highlight?
Can I first have a comment on hydrogen as well?
Please.
I very much like the question. I had an opportunity maybe 10 years ago to talk to one of the automotive executives, and he was in the industry already for many decades, and he said that 30 years back he heard that hydrogen will be the next big thing, and now 30 years have passed and everybody's saying still the same thing, that hydrogen will be the next big thing. So I really hope it will be now the next big thing. But regarding your questions, as I already mentioned, I think there always must be visionaries, and there are in the world visionaries who think about items which I cannot even imagine now today, and in 15 years it will be a reality. But on the other hand, I think from the technology point of view, we have quite a lot already available. It's just a question of putting it all together, making it work, making a business model out of it, funding it, make it a sustainable also financially, to try to sell it to the customers so they would embrace all that. But I think there are most of the technologies, and pragmatically said, the easiest way probably is to start launching the zero emission or low carbon emission buses and public service. I mean, this is done already everywhere. I mean, Finland is a good example. Estonia is doing the same, UK, everybody. So this is kind of pragmatically the fastest way to some sort of sustainability in mobility. But I mean, the technology is there. It's just need to put together as a business model, as a working solution.
Absolutely. Probably all of us have read about the technologies such as sucking carbon out of the air and basically dealing with the consequences, not at the core of the problem itself. Professor Blythe, how do you feel? Can we deal with the problem at the core, or do we still have to deal with the consequences at this point? Are we ready to change the business models inherently, and can technology help us?
I think the scale of change that's needed is absolutely massive. And even though, as government, we're producing our transport decarbonisation plan in the next month or so, a lot of it based on technology and encouraging people to move to more sustainable modes. And where necessary, UK government and local government putting money into supporting that. And that will go some of the way. I think we need hearts and minds to really get people to think about, do they need to travel, and by what mode, and also we need to, as a transport sector, we need to engage with the energy sector, because if we're changing the energy vectors for transport to sustainable aviation fuels, electric, hydrogen, etc., there are not energy networks for those at the moment. So we need to make sure that we understand what the likely transport demand is going to be in the future, how that investment is going to happen, and link that to the energy side too.
Thank you.
But
Yeah.
I was just going to say one last thing, and that is we are still going to need to look at technologies maybe to grab carbon and sequestrate carbon in different ways as well, to try and keep the impact of carbon on greenhouse gas warming as low as possible.
This is completely true. I mean, the world is approaching the biggest ever population that the Earth can actually handle, which is 10 billion euros, said by Bill Gates. 10 billion euros, 10 billion people. After 10 billion, when I say Bill Gates, I think of money. So, but Bill Gates has said that after 10 billion people, the Earth won't suffer this disease called humans anymore. So we'll have to stop this madness, I'd say. But Sami, switching to you and considering what Professor Blythe said, that we have to really think ourselves, do we need to make this trip? And what kind of alternative transport modes can we use? Do we need to fly all the time? Can we change something? Do you think that the public sector also can influence the users' approach to transport and what type of transport modes do they choose? And can we as individuals change the game as well?
Good question. I actually was hoping that we get to this part of the discussion because it's not just about the technology itself becoming more sustainable. It is about, as you mentioned, the population is getting bigger. That means people, the users, are getting more. The usage base of different mobility is getting bigger. That means that we need to focus on the users as well, and we need to provide them with different types of alternative services, alternative options how to use mobility, and the more you have options, the more likely you are to use them as well. And in that sense, it's the technology can help in not just becoming more sustainable itself, but also it has a big role in helping the behavior change that we really need.
This is true, and we do need some behavior change. What do you think, Argo? Do we need some behavioral changes?
Yes, absolutely. This was also one of the key questions, I think, that we always talk about technology. But the sustainability or sustainable mobility may mean very different things in different environments. In the cities, it may mean zero-emission vehicles. In rural areas, maybe it's some kind of community service for sharing a car. But also, one thing I've said already before in other events and just thinking about is that a lot of cities determine the public transport accessibility for people by meters where the bus stop is. So it's 500 meters for every person, 800 meters. Average person walks 1 kilometer within 12 minutes or something like that. Maybe we should ditch the last mile and first mile, and maybe we should just walk to the public transport instead of using different modes for that. Just a thought.
Actually, we promote this at Bolt as well. During the last Earth Day, we created this walk category at Bolt, where you normally have different options of taxi. We said, actually, you can walk this distance. So I think companies can actually influence the users, but of course, this would take away business from us. But for the sake of the planet, of course, we're willing to do it. And now we just have about 4 minutes left for discussions. And as it's still UK, Finland, Estonia Business Forum discussion, I would first like to ask Argo and Sami, do you feel for Finnish and Estonian companies, and now that the UK has left the EU, are there some barriers to enter the UK market and for our companies to actually offer the services there? And later, Professor Blythe, I would like to ask you how we can tackle those barriers or bring them down. And Sami, maybe you first. What do you think? Are there barriers?
Well, I think that we haven't seen the full impact of Brexit yet, so can't really respond to it from that perspective. But surely there are. There's always different kind of barriers whenever you go outside your own local comfort zone in your own country. But that's also something that you just need to learn. And therefore, I think we in public sector we have different tools how to help that, and we are doing that, but I'm pretty sure that we can do more. It is about, for example, in in Finland and as well as in Estonia, we have really open culture, like no hierarchy at all. And it may be a little bit surprised that you need to learn the ropes, how everything works in UK. And I think also what we can do, like in practical terms, we can open the doors to our colleagues. For example, we do have constant dialogue between different stakeholders as cities and within public sector as well. I think we can do our part in helping that as well. And we should do more.
Argo, what do you think? Are the barriers, if there are barriers, are they regulatory, are they user demand differentiation, or are they purely now policy-made barriers?
I don't have much experience myself with UK, but I expect that every country, every region has some barriers, and there are some legislative items, there are taxations you need to consider, how to do business in that country. But just from the very practical point of view, Estonia and Finland, as Sami already said, they are very flat in the sense of bureaucracy and approachability. So it is rather easy for a company to find a contact. Somebody I know once said that in Estonia, the prime minister is 2 phone calls away. So everybody knows somebody who knows somebody who knows the prime minister. It's probably not the case in UK. So there is much more, let's say, corporative hierarchy, and you really may struggle to find the contact with the right person who can help you further. To whom you can then present your business case or to present yourself.
Thank you. Professor Blythe, I believe you might have access to the Prime Minister of the UK within 2 phone calls, but for Estonian and Finnish companies, this might not be the case. Do you have some ideas, tips or tricks, how Estonian and Finnish companies can come and blossom in the UK, or is there too much bureaucracy?
Okay, well, clearly we are open for business and we want to engage with our friends from Estonia and Finland as we have done over the years. I should also say that the Prime Minister's telephone number was published on the web, so it's only 1 phone call away from everybody at the moment, but I'm sure that will be resolved. Working with the Department for Transport, working with the Department for Trade, working with ITS UK, clearly those partnerships can be made to enable your companies, your innovators, to come and help us solve our problems in the UK. I'm also delighted that we've resolved the issues concerning participation in the EU research programs. So again, great opportunities to work with UK companies, work with UK cities and transport stakeholders to demonstrate and evaluate and prove all these solutions that you have for sustainable mobility and smart mobility. And we need to be smart. We need to provide information and data and join it up, provide it to individuals to help inform them on the best ways to travel. And from the work I've done as a professor in both Estonia and in particular in Finland on many EU projects working together, you've got great skills. There's great stuff you can bring to help us, and we can learn from your digital capabilities, your use of 5G, and all the work you pioneered on payment systems, and more recently on mobility as a service. So I think there shouldn't be any difficult barriers. Clearly, everybody's still learning how to work together in the post-Brexit world, but we are open and we want to work with the best, want to work with our friends and our innovators, and this is the whole purpose of having this meeting today.
Thank you so much. And I'm very conscious of the time, which we've run out of. Thank you so much to all of the panelists today, Professor Blythe, Sami and Argo with me in the studio. And I will actually end this panel discussion with what Professor Blythe just said. We have to be smart. I think we have to make sustainability a business opportunity in transport, because it's not an option, it's a must for our planet. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope you have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Ms. Sarab, and our panelists for this really lively and forward-looking discussion. And now I would like to continue with our event and invite here Mr. Steve Norris, the President of ITS United Kingdom and former UK Transport Minister, for the closing remarks. Please, Mr. Norris, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much. And can I just say how enjoyable this morning's discussion has been. I was struck by the minister's remark, our Estonian minister's remarks about virtual conferencing. We probably have quite a lot to do to improve the quality of voice communication. And we all know that the phrase of the year is you're on mute. But the fact is that by holding this conference virtually and not flying to one common location, we're actually helping to deliver what one of the ultimate goals of all mobility improvement and technology is about, which is about combating global warming, a truly global challenge, and something that we've left far too late to deal with in the way that we should. So for me, mass smart mobility is all about helping us to combat emissions, to get to zero emissions as soon as we possibly can, to reduce congestion, which itself is the cause of substantial financial hardship, to get more reliance on public transport in the process, to have more emphasis on walking and cycling to make our population safer. All of these points have been touched on in this morning's really interesting panel discussion. It's true that the pandemic has set us back. Public transport, of course, has been hit very hard. But the reality is that as we recover, we recognize that the challenges we face are about smart mobility, about integrating transport modes, about making payment, for example, painless and as simple as we can, and about reducing congestion. And we've got new challenges because one of the effects of the pandemic has been the growth in online shopping. And that means, of course, the new challenge of the last mile delivery. Those sorts of challenges, the challenges of connected autonomous vehicles. And I say challenge because the technology is not the whole of the issue there. We have as many concerns about the legal ramifications of connected autonomous vehicles as we have about their technical safety. All of this suggests that there's an enormous challenge and opportunity for smart mobility. And just referring to our panel discussion, Sandra asked about the impact of Brexit. Let me just be very clear. We, as a country, left the European Union. We did not leave Europe. If anything, we are more concerned to ensure that we develop strong bilateral relations with all of our European friends and indeed friends around the world. So we will be, as a country, doing everything we possibly can to reduce barriers to trade. For that, I promise you, is the direction that everyone in this country wants to go in. Just talking about the session that Sandra chaired with Phil Blythe, with Argo Werk, and with Sami Salah, I think they made some really interesting points about the way forward. But I would just respond to one question which Sandra posed when she asked if this was all simply going to be a cost. Well, I think we have to ask ourselves, what is the cost of not combating climate change? What's the cost of creating cities which can't get the people without jobs to the jobs without people? What is the cost to ordinary people in their everyday lives of a world in which weather patterns are being destroyed and where we are seeing impacts of climate change now, serious impacts, the actual impact of which we still don't understand, but which we can be genuinely concerned about. So smart mobility is just one part of how we deal with this problem. We can't solve alone the issues around clean energy, although I'm glad that both Phil Blythe and Argo talked about green hydrogen. Green hydrogen, in other words, hydrogen which is produced from renewable energy, is an alternative to electric mobility, and indeed in the heavy truck sector, almost certainly the preferred option. On a 38-ton truck, you would currently need about 7.5 tons of battery in order to allow it to carry the balance of its load. That, frankly, does not sound like a sustainable option. So a great deal of good common sense that came out of that discussion, and I'm only sorry, as I'm sure you are, that we didn't have longer to allow our experts to talk. I'm absolutely delighted on behalf of ITS UK that today's event is happening. I won't keep you from your coffee, but just to say, I hope you with me will want to thank our ministerial friends for taking the time to welcome the conference, and to our panelists for engaging in such an interesting discussion. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Norris, for these really insightful comments and for the great wrap-up. This brings us to the end of the first part of our online business forum today. Now we will have a short break, and actually in 5 minutes, the bilateral meetings continue in B2Match platform, which link you can find in the agenda. If you do not have pre-arranged meetings yet, you can request it with the companies in the B2Match platform. If you wish to set up a meeting for a different date and time, I highly encourage you to contact the companies directly via email addresses that you can find under their profiles. In addition, we have posted a link under Q&A of panel discussion for a short feedback survey. It will be also sent to you via email. We are very grateful for your feedback, as it will help us in organizing more events in the future which could serve your interest in the best possible way. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for joining us today, and I hope you will have wonderful networking and that you all stay healthy and safe. Thank you.